He did well there, took batting practice from Hall of Famer Mel Ott, hit the longest home run that had ever been hit in that camp, and his career in professional baseball was well on its way. Until he slid into second base one day, shredded his ankle, and found himself back in Ohio recuperating. At that time, Milan was choosing between returning to the Giants or signing with Ohio's own Cleveland Indians, who had matched the Giants' offer. But Milan found out he had another choice to make when Pete Peterson visited the Zban house in Youngstown. Pete was the new head football coach at Marshall. He had previously offered Milan a scholarship when he was the coach at Mount Union. He wasn't successful then, but this time Pete came to Youngstown to try again, and this time the offer was to play at Marshall. And this time, Milan chose football and Marshall over the Giants and the Indians, and he came to Huntington. Milan loved Marshall and he loved Huntington. And this choice created what would be a lasting connection between Marshall and the Zban family. 3 years later, our brother Bill also chose Marshall. And when Bill came to Huntington, he never left. Bill was a starting quarterback for the Herd, and at one time the leading passer in the MAC. But I guess we'll save that for another banquet. Bill met and married a Huntington native, Linda Lee Gardner. Together they raised a wonderful family of 6 children, and in 1998, Bill was buried here in Huntington, near the Marshall Memorial, and much too young. Milan returned to Huntington often for family and friends, but never was that connection more profound than when he was asked to return as a writer on November 14, 1970, to cover the developing story of that day's tragic event, not yet knowing if our brother Bill had traveled with the team that day. Like all of us, Milan faced many choices in his life. A few of them involved promotion opportunities which would have required extensive travel and reduced time with his family. Some of them dealt with how to respond to claims of unfairness or not enough ink that came from parents or high school coaches. But the most impactful choices he made drove how he dealt with and fought against cancer for 30 years. His colleagues from that time tell me that he fought so valiantly yet gracefully that they were sure he simply willed the cancer away. They say he was a shining example of courage, and he was that and more to all of us. Now, Milan had a favorite quotation, but surprisingly, it's not from anybody in sports. It's not from the Bible. His favorite quote comes from the poet Robert Browning. It reads, "A man's reach should always exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for?" My big brother Milan certainly did reach for the stars. He tried to be better and to do better every day of his life. But in the choices he made, he remained firmly grounded in who he was, how he was raised, in his integrity, and above all, in his family. Milan always chose values over victory, and his faith in his family over fame and fortune. And yet, honors like this still came his way, perhaps because of those choices. On behalf of my brother Milan, his wife Pat of 42 years, his sons Greg and Dean, his grandson Sean, his sister-in-law, his nieces, his nephews and cousins, we have 2 tables of Zbans, and he graduated 60 years ago. And in fact, on behalf of the entire Zban family, I thank you, for we too are Marshall.